Thank you all for being here today. David, thank you very much. Mr. Heinemann, General, all the other distinguished guests for bringing me for my first time to Milwaukee. It took me some time to learn how to write it in the right way, and here I am. And as you know, I'm coming from a small country. And let me say something very important to all of us. We are celebrating in Israel these days the holidays, and tomorrow is a very special holiday called Sukkot. So I take this opportunity, first of all, to wish you all Shana Tova, which is a Happy New Year and a big success. And one of our main threats is cyber, so let's deal with it together. I say let's deal with it together because no one can deal with cyber unless he's working with others. Others means partners, strategic partners, governments. And it's not a secret that the best partner and the best friends of Israel also in cyber is the USA. It is very important because working together both with the FBI and the DHS, Homeland Security, and others is one of our most important role. And what I'm going to do today is try to go together with you and let you know what we have done in Israel, what are we doing in Israel, but mainly, and I'm not going to teach anything, but mainly I'm going to speak about business. Because I believe that cyber is a huge business. I believe that cyber is something that everybody who is in this room, at least, is dealing with. And let's see what we should do in many aspects. I'm taking the Israeli case as a special case of what we have done during the last 14 years on cyber, because the journey towards cyber starting in Israel at 1997. 1997, we established the e-government, which is the government organization dealing with electronic documents and others. And this was the first time that suddenly we realized that we are a target. We are a target with the last words .gov.il, which this is the first one to be attacked. And like the US, and like other countries as well, Israel is being attacked every day. Attacks is being done daily, based on political issues, based on any other issues at all. But most of all, if there is a war, if there is an operation, if there is a special a Memorial Day, if there is anything else, all the hackers and all kinds of hackers which I'll speak about are starting to attack Israel. The first one to be attacked is .gov.il, and during the last operation called Protective Edge, the number of attacks on Israel became 1,000% more than in the usual day. I can tell you one thing, and this is the most important message that I try to bring. I'm not afraid of hackers. I think hackers are very creative people. We have to be much better. And luckily, if I'm looking at Protective Edge, which I'll speak a little bit about it because there are so many people coming from the military background, is fortunately, we were not almost harmed at all by so many cyber attacks that we have. And this is something that I'm going to elaborate in a minute. So 1997, Israel established the e-government, and from that time, the e-government became the main target for every attacker. Who is the attacker? The attacker can be a country. During Protective Edge, it was the first time that we found out also that there is a correlation between Layl al-Qadr, which is an Iranian special day, and the attack. During that time, we found out that all kinds of hacktivism organizations are attacking us, like you're well known. And we also found out that there are many other groups, sometimes disguised as others, that are using special ops like Ops Israel or Ops USA. I'm sure that you heard about it. They attacked by special groups on the US banks, Israeli banks, and others as well, which affected badly the economy. Fortunately, not in Israel. Why? In a minute, I will elaborate the reasons. Dealing with cyber, usually I heard from the general about the movie. I have some new movies dealing with cyber as well. But one of the most important things is that I have several horrible scenarios. Yesterday, next to me on the plane from Israel, there was a guy. So he said, what is cyber? I said, you know, we are now going on a Dreamliner. It's a new plane. If one of the engines stops or two engines stops, do you want me to go on with the story? He said, no, this is cyber. I said, it can be cyber as well. Meaning, today, when we are speaking about cyber, we are dealing mainly with IT security. Most of the people here are dealing with IT security. I believe that the main concerns that we are going to have are coming on something new, on energy, medical devices, communication, things that National Guard, of course, is dealing with as well, financial organizations, all others. The first, I read yesterday a report about the first cyber murder. My wife told me it's not the first one. I saw Homeland. In Homeland, they tried to kill the US Vice President by attacking his device. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not anymore a story. This is something that we are going to face. This is something that we are going to face daily. And this is something that concerns all of us. So let's see what we can do. So what happened in Israel? At 2001, while almost nobody in the world identified cyber as a threat, the Israeli government decided that it should come out and identify a group of critical infrastructure organizations. And the government also decided to establish a new group called NISA, National Information Security Authority. NISA was established in 2002. So from 2002, we have a special organization already dealing with only one thing, not with the private sector, not with the citizens, only with critical infrastructure. Israel is a small country. I don't know how many of you have been to Israel before. That's good. Luckily, I'll speak that most of you will come on March for something special on cyber. It's better weather than here, I can assure you. So, in 2002, the government decided, first of all, to identify what is critical infrastructure. Because you can come to the United States, you can come to Europe, and every power station is critical. Every train is critical. Every plane is critical. The secret about why we succeeded so much was to focus and identify exactly what are critical infrastructure. At that time, in 2001, we identified only, it's not the scale of the US, about 27 organizations or companies to be identified as critical infrastructure, not more than that. Since 2002, maybe another 10 companies were added. And the near future, I think there will be another change, but not in critical infrastructure. What does it mean, critical infrastructure? It means that we have to identify organizations, factories, and others that anything happens to them is going to influence most of the citizens in this region. Not speaking about how many people can die from any attack on these facilities. The organization that was chosen by the government of Israel to deal with the critical infrastructure at that time was a special organization, in a minute I will tell you the name, which is dealing for years with anti-terror activities. Why? Because at that time we identified that dealing with critical infrastructure can be done as a terrorist activities, and the group dealing with terrorist activities is the Israeli Shin Bet, or the Israeli Internal Security, and they established a new group called NISA. Something else. We decided at that time that not only that a new group will be established, but this group will be acting as a regulator. Meaning, if you are the regulator, you can tell to each of the 27 or 30 companies or groups what to do and how to do. And they have to do it exactly the way they are told by the Israeli Secret Service, secret agency. And till today, although we have had many kinds of attacks all over. None, in Israel we say thanks God, none of these companies, although they were attacked, was somehow harmed by these attacks. Since 2002, almost nothing new happened. I mean, the only thing that happened was that cyber became a buzzword. Cyber became well known to everybody. We had a lot of movies that we believed Die Hard 1, 2, 3, and 4, this is just a nice movie, okay, let's see what will happen. And nobody was dealing with the civilians. Nobody was dealing with the private sector. Nobody was dealing with the industry unless with this critical infrastructure. And that brought the Israeli government to a decision that something have to happen. What we have to do is we have to establish a new organization. And a big workshop were done, headed by a general in Israel called Itzik Ben Israel, who was leading more than 100 people and came with the recommendation to the government and to the Prime Minister of Israel, let's establish something new called the Israeli National Cyber Bureau. And exactly on January 1st, 2012, the Israeli National Cyber Bureau was established as a group that will have to make Israel, first of all, a much more defended country, mainly for the civilian and private sector. I'm going back now. In a minute, I will come to the Israel National Cyber Bureau by telling you who are the organizations dealing with cyber in Israel. We call them, and everything is published, we call them the special groups. Let's go, first of all, to the intelligence organization. Each one of the intelligence organization is responsible for the organization itself, meaning the Mossad is responsible for the Mossad, the Shin Bet, the Israeli security agency, is responsible for itself, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, is for itself, the police is in charge of the police, but nobody was dealing with my aunt, which is living in Haifa, to say, what should we do? What should she do? And what happened is that establishing such a group was an example or a sign to the public, we have to do things in Israel, which brought many questions. And exactly on January 1st, 2012, we started about 3 people, headed by Dr. Eviatar Matanya, who is the head of the Israeli National Bureau. I was asked to deal with whatever I decided, so I decided not, since I have still some friends in the military, I decided not to deal with the military. I decided to work with the civilian sector. And I found out that the civilian sector is opened a lot to deal with the government, which is not so ordinary. And what we found out were 2 main things. First of all, we need to share the information. These are good words. We have to share information. We have to do it the right way. But as a matter of fact, when we started to speak with the military, the intelligence organization, and others, they started to say, we cannot share the information with you. You know, it is too secret. It is too sensitive. We can do these things. I said, okay, let's wait. And we waited. Then we came to the civilian sector, to the Israeli banks, to the Israeli energy, to the Israeli ministries and others, and we started to talk with them and tell them, okay, we would like to share with you information. Would you like to share with us? They said, you know, the first part is okay. We would like to take every information you have. We cannot share with you any information. I said, why we shouldn't share the information with us? They said it is too sensitive. We have an antitrust problems. We cannot tell you things that later will come out publicly, and we cannot do it the right way. So let's see what we can do. And we found out, and I'm sure that most of the civilian people here knows, that most of the information about cyber attacks are not in the military intelligence and all other CIA, NSA, DIA, and others. all this information is mainly in the civilian sector. Let's talk about intelligence, because everything starts with intelligence. I'm not even starting now to speak about EI, the essential element of information. I'm starting to speak about where is this information. Who is the first one that really knows what is going on in your computers? It's a small company, a US company, not so small of course, called Microsoft. Microsoft, as a matter of fact, knows everything about all of us. When I'm trying to download a new software, I got a message, would you like to active ActiveX? You remember it? And I say, yes, of course. And then, the minute I'm doing it, Microsoft is checking whether my software is updated, whether it is legal. And as a matter of fact, if I was in Thailand during the last year and I bought for $1 a new software which I put on my computer, they can identify it, and at the same time they can stop my computer from working. As a matter of fact, they can do it for billions of people in the world, which means all the information in my computer, in other computer, is going all over the world, but there is one organization that has this information. I'm not speaking now about privacy. This is a separate issue that I will come out in a minute. But this is not the only company. I don't know, but I'm sure that most of you are operating in antivirus systems on your computer. Is there anybody who doesn't operate an antivirus? Don't be shy. Usually I come to some places and people say, no, it's good that we don't. No. So who is the antivirus company? And I'm speaking about Symantec, McAfee, Kaspersky from Russia, and some others. What is the antivirus? The antivirus is a solution that is installed on my computer, updating these companies whether something was identified by the systems. When I say something brackets, I don't speak about APTs. The general mentioned APTs. I will mention it in a minute, but very shortly. Meaning that all the information about all kinds of attacks, everything which is going in the network all over the world, is usually based in companies like antivirus companies, Microsoft, IBM, Cisco, and you name it. Meaning, why do we have to go to all this secret organization and ask them to share the information with us if we can get this information directly from companies, which are civilian companies? And civilian companies would like to do very important thing is to make money. So let's find a way to pay them the money and start building the concept how to work on their intelligence. And as a matter of fact, one of the main questions that was raised while we started the Israeli National Cyber Bureau was, okay, what is the role of the government? Are we going as a government to make sure that every citizen will be defended and will get all the information and will get all the tools or antiviruses for free, or should we do it in another way? So the second question was, okay, let's see what these companies are doing, because these companies we identified are working in a way that for their clients, and I'm sure that some of you are their clients, they are sending special reports, either a monthly report, annual report, special report, if they identified something. Much more than that, some of these companies are even having a monthly report that is for sale. Many of them are having their reports which are not even cost you money. If you just have the time to look at all these reports, you can do it. And then we identified that, okay, if this information is already in place, let's share this information with the relevant people. Who are the relevant people from the Israeli National Bureau? First of all, is of course all the special organizations that suddenly realized that they don't have all this information. And we can support them with information which is coming from open source intelligence, from OSINT, without any damage. You don't have to take care of your special sources. You just have this information. Second, and this is much more important, how do we take all this mass information, analyze it the right way, and disseminate it in the right way to the right people? So if you ask me of one of the biggest business in the world today that people who thinks about business in cyber can do is sharing intelligence data coming from open source intelligence. That brought the world to another kind of business, which was the let's work on a common protocol that can disseminate this information automatically. And then came protocols like Styx, Taxi, and others that many companies are starting to work on them as well today. Although in Israel we think that we invited the wheel, it's not correct. I can tell you that most of the things that I tried to adopt came from the United States, because in the United States things are going sometimes slowly, but this is a great, great carrier, a big carrier, going slowly, but it knows how to work. And then we found something which was very unique to the United States, which we are going now to adopt in Israel, speaking about sharing of information, and this was the ISACs. I understand that gentleman from MS ISAC was here today. This is amazing, but I was working a lot with the FS ISAC and the ES ISAC, the energy sector ISACs and the financial sector ISACs, and we found that there are ways to do it. But in Israel, it was not so easy. Why? Because the regulations, which is not an ugly word when you are dealing with cyber, was not yet established. In order to do it, we had to come out with a new strategy for regulation, which we are now going to finalize and get the approval, and that all the other people know about it. But one thing we have to do is let's find a way to share. When dealing with private sector or with public sector, one of the most important words that I found out was confident. Let's build the confidence. If we should come out as a government to the public and ask them, share the information with us, usually they will not do it. I was speaking with most of the banks in Israel, most of the energy companies in Israel. When it came to identify or let us know what really happened, they suddenly came us up with so many obstacles saying, we cannot do it. So if they cannot do it, let's find the right way to do it. And the right way to do it was to come out with something new, which we are now in the first process, which we learned, luckily, from FS, ES, MS, ISACs, etc. We decided that we are going to build something new, which we called it a sectorial cert. You know the CERT, yes? Computer Emergency Response Team, which is very well known in the States. I usually read all the article and publication, both from US CERT, ICS CERT. Sometimes it's very, very professional. But if you go to the highlights, or if you have the right IT people, they can do it. So what we found out is that let's take this idea of the FS ISAC and ES ISAC and establish as a pilot two main sectorial certs. One of them is the financial one. The second one is the energy one, which we are now trying to build, because if you remember, I told you we have the critical infrastructure which is 27 up to 30 companies, but we have much more now in Israel. So let's see how we are going to share the information with them as well. And that brought us to another problem, so-called. And that's it. Okay, how do we make sure that the energy companies, the financial banks, the communication companies and others are really working and doing the right job in their cyber security? How can we do it? And we found that there are some creative people in Israel who were dealing, it started with the energy sector, who said, listen, you know, every year when you have to renew your license for the company, you have to go like, I believe it's also here in the States, for the fire brigade. They have to sign that you have all the sprinklers, everything in place, you have to do it. So we added also a part which is a cyber part, meaning you have to do all the relevant things as needed in order to be entitled to renew your license. If you are not going to do it, there are ways how to go on. it's a process. It's a process that takes time. We decided to make it more than 3 years, but we finally found out that it is starting to work. And the same concept suddenly was somehow loved by the Ministry of Communication. Why? Because one of the things that we did, and this is a big advantage of a small country, we started to create special forums. One of the forums was the civilian forum. All the government ministries, all the people that we believe that are coming from the cybersecurity, together in the side with all the secret guys who were disguised like civilians and just listening, who came to us after the meeting and say, hey, listen, you're doing things that we didn't know that are already existing. And say, yes, you have to be open-minded in order to see that the civilians have most of the things. And sometimes it doesn't cost so much money. And that brought us to the idea, first of all, how to renew the license. That brought us to the idea of the certs. And that brought us to several other ideas that I'm going to elaborate together with you. Israel is being attacked, as I told you, by, well, let's put it this way. Attacking by cyber is not a regular kinetic attack. What is the big difference? I'll take the Israeli case. It's much easier for me. If there is a missile launch from Gaza Strip, after about 2 milliseconds, we can say exactly the MGR. We can tell the Air Force, listen, it was launched from this place. They have to make all the clearances to make sure that it is not from civilians and others, and so and say, okay, this is correct, we can bomb it. When somebody is launching a cyber attack, not only on Israel, on the US and others, usually you don't know where did it come from, because usually he's using kind of proxy servers and others. That's why I usually laugh with my people. I told them, listen, you know who is the main country attacking Israel? They said, who? Iran, Russia, China? I said, no, it's the US. But I was laughing because having a proxy server in the US and attacking by being disguised is so easy because of privacy laws, so it can disappear quickly. So if you are a terrorist organization who is, let's say, now in Gaza or in another place, and you decide to attack Israel and make a big damage, as a matter of fact, most probably we will not be able to identify where this attack came from. We will not be even easy, and they are not going to admit. Second, something very special happened. If in the past, to create special weapon system, we had very, very strong industries, very talented people, big team leaders, and others, like in the States, in Israel, in other, if I can compare. What happened today is that buying or purchasing cyber attacks tool became so cheap, so easy by everybody, that suddenly the asymmetric war that we are talking so much in the Middle East became a cyber asymmetric war, because you can go to the darknet or the deep web, have your own credentials, and buy new tools. You can have about a 20 giga attack for DDoS, distributed denial of service, for about $5 an hour. And business in the dark web is becoming an excellent business. There are merger and acquisitions inside between them. And anybody today can come and have the new latest weapon systems, the new vulnerabilities, the new zero-day attack directly from there. So our life is now becoming much more difficult. So what should we do? One of the things that we identified quickly in Israel was the need to make Israel a leading country in industry. I don't know how many of you read the book Israel as a Startup Nation. If you want to learn the secrets about Israel as a high-tech, it is in English, it was written by US people, it's Israel as a startup nation. So we said, let's move now. Let's move to Israel as a cyber nation. Let's make sure that the government is going to support the industry in order to make the threat an economical opportunity, so we will able to come with new companies, new technologies, which I will elaborate in a minute, in order to start and having new solutions. The existing solutions, which are based on antivirus, and I'm quoting one of the biggest US antivirus company, I won't say it's over, but it's almost over. Companies like Symantec identify daily more than 150,000 new mutations of viruses. But the main viruses that are attacking all of us, and these are the main threat, are the APT, the advanced persistent threats, which usually are going under the antivirus radar, and nobody can identify them. So we had to come out also with solutions to work on APTs. And in Israel today, we have about 10 companies like this dealing with APTs. I'm sure that in the States there are others as well. And new buzzwords started to come out to the market. Predictive analysis, anomaly detections, whitelist and blacklist, so many new things. And we decided that we cannot wait. We have to make sure that we will finance many of these companies. Some of them will not survive, of course, but we have to come out with new solutions that will be open to the world. What do we mean when we say open to the world? I believe, but this is my belief, that dealing with cyber defense should be opened between friends, allies, countries, because if we are not going to do it, we are going to lose the battle quickly, because the same virus attacking the bank in South Korea is the same virus attacking in 2 milliseconds the Bank of America or Bank Leumi in Tel Aviv. Meaning, we have to make sure that we have the solutions, we have the network, we have the tools how to disseminate this information, and we have the tools to identify it and stop it immediately. And one of the well-known attacks on the banks on Israel, and which called Ops Israel and Ops USA by a group called Ezzadin el-Qassam, was to work between the gaps in order to make sure that maybe we are not talking between each other and see how they can do it. DDoS attack, I'm sure most of you heard about these words, I'm sure. DDoS attack, just to analyze it for the people who doesn't usually work with it, the distributed denial of service is mainly used to be thought as a psychological issue. Why psychological issue? Because it doesn't make, let's say so now, any harm, but all the people sitting here will try to connect to their banks, and suddenly they say there are no service from the bank of so-and-so. And my aunt in Haifa, she started to say, oh, listen, we have to take the money out of the floor because maybe the bank is not existing anymore. And maybe something happened to the bank. And let's see, that's a chaos. As a matter of fact, it is totally psychological issue. It is psychological, but it affects the people. And that brings me to the media. Because what is going on? After 2 seconds that you go and get a service by your bank, one of the internet newspapers is coming with a big message. Cyber attack on the Bank Leumi of Israel, although there was nothing, or almost nothing. Media is something that I don't know if we'll have the time to deal with it today, but this is one of the main issues. It's a professionalism, how to deal with cyber and the media. I will come to it. But DDoS, I'm not looking at DDoS as if it is almost nothing. I look at DDoS as a very suspicious attack. Because I believe, and maybe this is a way of being paranoid sometime, I believe that maybe some of these DDoS attacks are being used as a deception to bring inside your systems all these APTs in order to wait for the right day when it has to be operated. And our main concern, I'm now going back to the critical infrastructure, is what? Is that one of the energy company will blow up. Brackets, according to some open sources in the white part and the west part of the world say that Stuxnet was something like this. Stuxnet was a special attack that, as a matter of fact, the operator who was sitting somewhere, as it is published, in Iran, he didn't see anything special going on. For him, when he looked at the dashboard, everything was the same. But it could blow it up. Meaning, and Stuxnet, let's say this is only one example. What else do we have? We don't know. We have to start looking for the world that I believe is the real world of threat. Energy is the first one. Medical device is the second one. Most of you people you are so young. In my age, maybe I will have a memory flash soon, so because this is going to be the future to make my memory better. At that minute, I become a target. I become an IP. I become an IP target. So is the communication. In order to somehow hack into your iPhone, Android, whatever you have, is not such a big problem today, and we all know it. Do you know any good mobile company dealing with it? I don't know yet. But this is one of the biggest business that is going to be soon. It's already. Meaning, we have to be prepared not only for the regular IT attacks, but also to the energy, communication, healthcare, and so many others as well. And this is something that we will be able to do only if we will put our strengths together, if we will cooperate, if we will share the information, if we will open our government organization and private organization to established companies from all over the world. I don't believe that the solution coming is only from Israel, to make it very, very clear. But it has to be a way to work together. And of course, I heard the guy from the Verizon is the supply chain. Supply chain is another issue. Is an issue that all of us has to be aware. Most of us don't even know what we have to do. I mean, we understand that supply chain is a threat. We understand that we have to be well prepared. But you know, you can buy today a system from one of the well-known US companies, but it is coming from another part of the Far East, and then maybe somebody did something. And then it brought us to a new technology, to a new business, which is the cybersecurity for the Internet of Things, or cybersecurity to the industrial Internet of Things. Because what we are going to see and hear about protocols like SCADA, which I'm sure that some of you heard, but this is only the beginning. We start to speak about machine-to-machine, what we are going to do, how we are going to deal with it. We are going to speak, or we are speaking already about the wise home, the electric home, which suddenly you don't need a key or anything else. And this is going to be a target not only for us as defenders, this is going to be the main target as attackers. I'll give you one example. You know that today you don't have to take a Tommy gun in order to get into a bank and say, this is a robbery, give me the money. Billions of dollars are moving only by hackers. But did you think about something called the smart grid or the smart meters? Just imagine yourself, somebody is hacking into the smart meters in Milwaukee. And this is like a robbery, because he can do two things. First of all, I'm as a citizen suddenly get a 200 bill every month. And now I start to negotiate, yes? I start to negotiate with the company. I didn't do it, but most of the people, it's automatic. Sometimes it will take them half a year just to identify it. Or let's say, I'm a good friend of these hackers, and they tell me, usually what is your bill, $200? We'll make it for you $5. Somebody else is losing, he will find it. Meaning that every place that we are suddenly touching becomes a new target. It's a beautiful world, by the way. We have to live it, and this is nice and beautiful, but we have to be aware. And that brings us to another question in Israel, which it's not only an Israeli question. Who are the people to deal with cybersecurity? Who are the people who are entitled to say, I'm a cybersecurity professional. 3 guys coming from NSA, from CIA, from the Mossad. They are coming to the company and said, we'll give you the best price. We're experts in pen testing. We know how to do it. And please check. And you look at the price and you say, wow, it looks good. The guys looks excellent. And let's start to do it. Who certified them? Who told them that they are able to do it? Who told you that you can take these guys and let them work? Maybe they are just giving you some nice stories. So what we try to do in Israel, and since it is affecting the whole business of Israel, we decided in the Israeli National Bureau at the time to establish a special group headed by civilians, not part of the government, in order to identify the professions of cyber security. We came out to about 40, 45 professions list. We decided that this is not a way to work, and we decided to start with about 5 professions, but these professions will be divided into, let's say, 2 parts. First of all, if Milwaukee Municipality IT is considered to be level 5, only people in level certified at level 5 will be able to work in this municipality. If you are working in a small supermarket, I'm not speaking about Target, of course, okay, you need to have something that maybe is only on level 2. And we are starting to work on this now. It takes time. In the States, I believe it will take even more, but we had to start. We have to start. And in order to do it, everything is regulations. I don't like the word regulations. That's why I'm not in the government anymore. Nobody likes regulations. But in cyber, with no regulations and no standards, you cannot work. And in order to make it easier for US companies to work all over the world, or let's say in Israel, and Israeli companies working in the States, we decided to adopt mainly the US standards for cyber. Who is the one in charge of the US standards? NIST. So I was sitting together with Donna in Washington, D.C. She is in charge of cyber. I saw that they did a tremendous job, and I said, let's go first of all and adopt them as it is, and if we have something very special, let's put it later, but let's start. And the same also for the European standards. So we mix it all together, and we started to work on the standards for our systems. One of the important things that we don't have yet in Israel, we just have a pilot, is a cert. You are lucky. Your cert is doing a great job. Your cert is something that I believe brings today most of the information, and we are going to establish, we are on pilot already, but soon there will be a new Israeli cert that will work both with the American cert and the others as well. So all the information will be publicly disseminated to you in order to make sure that you will get also this information. But there is always a very important thing, and this is the way to communicate. I don't believe that everything is going by machines only. It has to be a way that we can talk to each other and find the right way. And usually it happens when there is an attack. When there is an Ops Israel or an Ops USA or an Ops Gaza or an Ops whatever, if there is any information, and most of the information, 95% I may say, of this information is public or in somehow in Facebook, let's share this information, because there is almost nobody who can look at all this information. Why do I say Facebook? Because when we are speaking about government like Iran and other attacking us, this is a full intelligence cyber operation. I put it for a second in the side. But if we are speaking about Anonymous, if we are speaking about WikiLeaks, if we are speaking about other organizations that would like to hack into your system and to damage them, they are working from Pakistan, from Indonesia, from Malaysia, from any place in the world. They are not on the same time zone. They are not working from the same place, and they are very anxious to do things. In order to do these things, they have to coordinate it. They have to coordinate between each other, they have to cooperate, and they have to make sure that it is really happening. By the way, when Ops Israel started for the first time 2 years ago, we found out that there's going to be an attack of about 500,000 people. Why? Because most of the guys made like, we will. But they weren't sleeping, it was the weekend, so it's never like this. But one thing for sure, the intelligence is in Facebook. The intelligence is in the social network, because they have to communicate. And I don't think that each one of you is going to look what's going on. And that's why we established a national situational awareness room, a place in the Israeli National Cyber Bureau that looks all over, disseminate this information, working with all the organizations together in one place that when there is an operation, and make sure that there will be almost, let's hope, no damage. The attackers becomes much more sophisticated every day. They don't just use DDoS, they don't just use zero-day effects or vulnerabilities that they can buy. They are also dealing with new kind of solutions like attacking DNS servers and doing things that we were not regular to see, but we have to be prepared. One of the main targets is now the cloud, and cloud security becomes an issue. And you have to be prepared for this kind of attacks, since this day is mainly about awareness and training and how to be prepared. I think this is one of the most important things. It's like a National Guard is preparing himself every day for something. Let's prepare the public sector and the private sector for this issue that not only can happen, it will happen. So just as I don't know how long do I still have, I'm going more and speak about now. I just want to mention the media. And I start with an example happened in Israel. One of our main GSM provider in Israel had a malfunction on the system. The MSC sends a malfunction message, the switch fall down, and nobody, which is their subscribers, could be able to talk. Okay. Since they believed that maybe something is happening, they went, of course, to the backup, and the same message, which was, by the way, I'm telling you the answer now, a malfunction message, came to the other switch. And the second switch fall down as well. 2 milliseconds, big cyber attack on the communication on Israel. When a correspondent, usually he's looking for a header, he's looking for an upline, he would like to write something. He doesn't care whether it is right or not. Not that he's not responsible, but he knows that if he is not going to do it, the second station will do it in a minute. And then what about him? What about the bonus? So the most important thing is, first of all, if you are in a national level or in, let's say, in Wisconsin, is first of all, try to know what really happens. Easy to say, not easy to do. Because if you have to act in a very strict way, you have to be very honest, you cannot lie to the public, you have to do it the right way. So if you don't know whether it happened or not, or whether it happened as a cyber attack or not, you're in a big trouble. And you need to find the tools. How you will have a kind of dashboard that will show you exactly what's going on. The problem that happened there was a malfunction, nothing with cyber. So the second thing, I got a phone call from one of the correspondents. I was in the Prime Minister's office, so somebody has to react. Say, Rami, what do you say? I said, it is not my job to react. And people ask me, why not? I say, listen, if I'm going to answer that is not a cyber attack, they will say, wow, it's a lie. Otherwise, why the Prime Minister's office is answering? If I will say anything, it is not good. So what we found out very important, if you have a speaker and if you know that it is not a cyber, or if it is a cyber, this is something else, what you have to do, the one who has to come to the public and speak about what happened is the company which is responsible for this cyber defense. At that time, I spoke with the Director General of the Ministry of Communication. I told him, you don't say a word, it will be a mistake. And we came directly to the CEO of this company. He said, I'm going to check, and he came to the public, and in 2 minutes it's finished. I mean, there was a big malfunction, and they had a problem, but it was not cyber. Just 2 words about the last operation we had in Israel, because this is something that when we are dealing with what we call an asymmetric war, is something very special. It's not USA and Russia. When you are dealing with terrorism, you are dealing with a psychological warfare that all of us are taking a part, even if we don't want to take a part in this one. Why? Because all of us are using LinkedIn, all of us are using Facebook, all of us are using WhatsApp, etc. It's not a promotion. This is life. And the minute something happens, you cannot control anything. One of the things happened is that, first of all, during the Protective Edge, which was the last operation against Gaza, against Hamas in Israel, what we found out is that, first of all, the hackers from the other side tried to steal passwords of some of the electronic delivery systems in Israel in order to use the names, password, and the clients of these providers. I'll give you an example. One day, even myself, but I'm suspicious, so I check everything. I got a message, like you have the Washington Post and the other, that you can get messages coming directly to your smartphone. I got a message like this. This is a message from the Israel, and it came from one of the most well-known Israeli newspaper called Haaretz. It said, a message from the Israeli Shin Bet, Israeli security agent. There is a terrorist. This terrorist came to Israel. He has a bomb. He is looking to hear the sirens. Whenever the sirens start to work, he is coming to the shelters, and he's going to commit suicide and kill the people. I got it. Another 300,000 people got it. And since you get it from, let's say, a reliable source, first of all, you ask yourself, what is it? And it's a little bit logic, because the people using the social network, they know the psychology. And people started to ask questions, and people started to be suspicious, and people started to not to know what happened. I looked at it from the other perspective, is how did it happen? Because I checked it with the Israeli Shin Bet. They say there is nothing. I said, listen, maybe nothing, but all the newspapers and all the iPhones and Samsung and others are working. And we found out, and this is a way by the terrorists, that they were hacking into some of the delivery systems used as a company, outsourced company, to send these messages. And while they have been inside, because usually even these companies maybe didn't use the right password and other precautions to make sure, they publish it. And this was only the first message. Then we started to see, and this was very quick work done by the Israeli Shin Bet in order to identify, okay, how can we see what really happened? Because tomorrow they will use it again. And you have to think about this as well. And we found that usually hackers are looking for computers which are somehow in the side. It can be in a school. It can be in every place that nobody even knows that it is existing. And while you don't know that it is existing, somebody is using it, or a botnet, in order to make sure that it starts to spread the news. The second one was Facebook. I'm doing it very quickly just to give you some ideas about what happened, which was very, very bad. One of the tragic scenarios that we are having in Israel is that if one of our soldiers will be kidnapped. We had a special case on this. It's also in the States like this. And we realized that if something like this will happen, we cannot control it. Why? Because in WhatsApp, they will start sending the names, which was done unpurposely by people who knew the case. And then what is very bad is that the parents sometimes hears about something that happens even before you can officially check and tell them, which is bad, but it starts to make the rumors. But suddenly what we found out that one of the soldiers that we were suspected as if he was kidnapped, but we knew that he was killed, he suddenly, sorry to say it, came back alive and had a new page in Facebook. And he started to speak or to write to the public what to do and against the government and against this and against that. This is a real psychological warfare that you have to work and to find the right ways to work directly with Facebook, Google, and others to make sure that it can stop. And if there are no regulations to do it, you have to find the regulations because this is affecting the whole public while you are doing these things. And we have many cases like this because in an asymmetric war, a cyber became takes a very important role in how to do it. So what do we do in Israel? One of the things that was published by or decided by the Prime Minister of Israel about 1 month ago, and this is a big change, is that we are going to have a special authority who will be responsible for the civilian and public sector. Because if something happens today, and that's happened when we started our job, we said, what will happen if two electric companies, water companies will blow up? Who is responsible? I said, we look like this and say, where is Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister? He's the boss. And it cannot happen. We need to have the Israeli National Cyber Bureau as the one dealing with the doctrine, looking how to build Israel as a safer place, but there is a need to have an operative solution headed by somebody who can tell the civilian market what to do. And after a long time, the decision was made. We are going to start a new authority like this. And I believe that this is the biggest change that happened in Israel, maybe in other places as well, that somebody starts to speak with the civilians, not only with the special organization, because the civilians are going to be affected and are affected by cyber. Of course, there are many questions. How do we deal with the civilians? What are the regulations? What can we do and what to do? What kind of audit should we do, etc. It takes time, but at least that there is a decision, and let's follow up this decision and see what we can do. Last words. In Israel, and this is also about the place that we are here today, in Israel we have a special ecosystem. A special ecosystem that is the one that built the Israeli high-tech, and this is the secret of the Israeli cyber as well. It is based on 5 main pillars that I will run quickly on them. The first time is the defense, military. Every young man and woman has to go to a national compulsory service, and I call it the national incubator. Rich and poor, smart, not smart, all the people are coming together to one place. And in this place, we try to teach them 2 main things: leadership and creative, thinking out of the box. Why? Because we would like them, after they finish their job, to go either to stay in the military, that's what we hope, or to go to the academy, or to go to the industry, and we have to teach them the tools how to do it. So every F-15 pilot, as a matter of fact, is an entrepreneur. He gets a $50 million plane. He has to take it off the air, bring it back safely, and make sure that the business is still running. So if you are looking at everything as creativeness, This what brought Israel, the most of the Israeli startups starting from the military. Second, since in the military, and we are a small army, we call it army, not like you, Army, Navy, but let's say the IDF is small. Let's imagine that I started my new startup yesterday, and I have a dream, which I would like to meet the Israeli CEO of Oracle, because I believe Oracle, this is my new IPO. Okay, so I'm lucky. I'm calling the CEO of Oracle, Israel. He has a beautiful assistant, so usually says he's busy, he will call you back, he will never call you back, and everything will be okay, and you know the answers, and you are waiting, and he's not calling you. But then you know one thing. About 1 month later, you are going for the reserve. In the reserve, you are going to be 30 days. Who you are going to meet there? The CEO of Oracle. At that time, he will talk to you. No obstacles. So in a small place, in a small country, where everybody knows each other, easier also to go for business. And since we identified that the defense is the basic, we look at the second part, and this is the academia. We are here in Marquette University, beautiful place. I was amazed by so many young people that I saw while I was coming here. I don't know if Marquette University is teaching cyber. I'm sure that they are teaching computer science, electricity, engineering, whatever. What we found in Israel when we started about 3 years ago is that almost nobody was teaching cyber. Cyber is a profession. If you want to build a Dreamliner engine, you have to start with a small engine. If you want to deal with cyber, you need people who come from the academia. So what we did first of all was to support the Israeli academies in two ways. One way, we financed and we gave them a lot of money to start having research on cyber. Why? If people will start checking, learning, making research on cyber, this will appeal to the other people who will start learning. Second, we decided to give money to the Israeli universities, so if they don't have a faculty to teach cyber, let them teach cyber. And we identified cyber as a master degree. That's what we thought. Maybe it's a mistake, but this is what we thought. We believe in order to learn cyber, you have to learn computer science and physics and others as a first degree with some courses, and then go on to the second one. And we even have an interdisciplinary faculty in the Tel Aviv University dealing with it. Meaning, we believe that we have to invest the money in order to do it. The third part is the human capital. Like in the States, we are very young people, very talented people. They would like to do business. They are thinking in other ways. They are looking at new challenges. Let's make sure that these people will go to cyber. Why cyber? Because we identified it as the main threat. Maybe in the near future we'll do something else. And one of the most important things that we started is education. I'm not going to elaborate on education. It is a special issue. But one of the most important things we established together with a private, or with a, let's call it public organization, we established a special national cyber training. We call it Makshimim, that we train yearly from all the social periphery, more than 500 people when they are 16 years old up to 18. Then they are coming to the military. They serve in cyber. After they finish their 3 years and if they decide to go on, it's good. If not, and they are leaving, we started to have great people that has already the experience, because most of the people, they don't have experience in cyber. The next one is that, and this is the fifth one, or the fourth one, is that we need to have national laboratories. We have to deal with cyber as a threat, to deal with, for instance, test beds. If we are going to invest in Israeli companies to make it cyber companies, they need to have a test bed, because when they are coming to the United States, the first question, did you sell it in Israel? If you say no, you start to sweat, you move, my mother, her friend, that's not good. You need to have a place to do it. So the e-government was the first test bed. And now we are starting together, and I'm proud to say it, with companies like Cisco and Deter University and the Homeland Security from the States to start a big lab that everybody will be able to use as a test bed. Academics people, the new startups, people from all over the world. Let's use it. Otherwise, we will not be able to train ourselves at the right way in order to do it. I forgot one of the parts, but I will remember it in a minute. And the last thing we decided to do, in Israel, most of the big US companies have, for years, their research centers, not on cyber. IBM Research Center is in Israel. Cisco is in Israel. Symantec in Israel. Oracle in Israel. GE in Israel. So we decided to try and convince them to have their cyber research centers in Israel. And we succeeded. And in order to make it bigger, and that's the last word, because the general is looking at me and I'm really worried, is that we decided to open something called, in Beersheba, Ben Gurion University in the Negev, which is a part where all the military of Israel is going to move soon, calling the Cyber Spark. Cyber Park, Cyber Sparks, which is also a spark. The idea to bring all the big research companies from the world, Israeli companies, startups, helping to finance them, supporting them in many ways that I'm not going now to speak about, and create something that in one place people will be able to speak cyber, to learn cyber, to teach cyber, to deal with cyber. When I say cyber, cyber defense and everything. So this was in a very short while and very quickly, I'm sorry that I'm running out of time, about what did we do and what are we doing in Israel. But one thing for sure, you want to deal with cyber, you have to invest. You have to invest in the future of your people. You have to invest in education. You have to invest in the academia. You have to invest in the industries. And you have to make sure that these young people who start their own startups will be able to have their own playground in order to check their systems. And if you will believe in these people, you will find out that your cybersecurity is much better. Thank you very much.